This is Jennifer Gonzalez, and welcome to episode 273 of the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. In this episode, I'll share the 10 strategies that have helped me master the art of classroom timing. We talk a lot about all the things that make teaching a challenging job. Insufficient funding, lack of support staff, student behavior, meeting parent demands, and the ever-present crush of testing pressures. And that's just a short list. But there is another struggle that doesn't get nearly enough attention, something that can ruin even the most beautifully designed lesson plans. Making our planned instruction fit precisely into the time we have allotted for it. Any experienced teacher will tell you that lesson plans rarely take the exact amount of time you have set aside for them. Unless you already have great systems in place, you've probably experienced one or more of these scenarios. An activity takes less time than you had allotted for it, leaving extra time to fill. An activity takes longer than expected, causing it to spill over the time you had planned for it, or you and your students get so absorbed that you don't notice the time until it's too late. Or both happen at once. Some students finish early and others take longer than you thought they would. Or at the end of the school day, a ton of papers, materials, and to-dos have piled up, requiring even more of your time when you're already exhausted. Finding yourself in any of these situations is kind of awful. It is for me anyway. When I have too much extra time to fill, I panic. I feel a responsibility for giving my students something of quality to do, but when I'm pressed for time, I'm a terrible improviser. And when I'm in the middle of an activity and I see that it's going over time, I start to rush, skipping over some of the most carefully designed parts of my lesson, or not giving my students enough time to process. It's not good. But over the years, I've built a few habits into my classroom routine that usually prevent these problems from happening or help me deal with them much more effectively when they do. Some I figured out on my own, others I borrowed. If you think you could get better at managing your classroom time, these are worth a try. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Renaissance for sponsoring this episode. With decades of learning data and close collaboration with educators, Renaissance advances AI responsibly to deliver tools you can trust and results you can see. Renaissance's 40-year commitment to accelerate learning for all students drives this ongoing investment in the best use of AI throughout its solutions, which includes STAR assessments, Nearpod, Freckle, Accelerated Reader, and more. By connecting real-time assessment data to personalized instruction and engaging practice, Renaissance's use of AI empowers educators to make informed decisions that meet each student's unique needs, while helping administrators answer essential questions throughout the year. As technology continues to advance, Renaissance is committed to the best use of AI to amplify teachers' impact and support leaders with actionable insights to make timely decisions and celebrate student success. If you're looking for trustworthy and innovative AI tools for your school or district, Renaissance can help. To learn more, visit renaissance.com/AI. Support also comes from Erickson Institute. If you love working with young children but feel drained by the pressures of the classroom, you're not alone. There's another way to make a lasting difference by supporting children and families at the very beginning of their developmental journey. Erickson Institute's online master's degree in early intervention offers a different path. You'll support children ages birth to 5 through one-on-one work, addressing early developmental challenges and helping set children up to reach their full potential. Competitive grants are available to help make this transition more accessible. It's still meaningful work, just quieter, more focused, and more sustainable. To learn more, visit cultofpedagogy.com/EI. Now here's my list of 10 strategies for mastering the art of classroom timing. By the way, I'm sharing this stuff from recent experience. Although I left full-time teaching many years ago, in January 2026, this year, I started teaching English classes to adult learners 3 mornings a week. I am planning to share more about this later on, about what an incredible experience this has been. But for now, it has given me some fresh ideas for skills and strategies that I can share here. So this is just the first of what I hope are many other posts that come from this new role. So here's what I do to make the most of my class time. When I stick to these habits, I often end class feeling like I've made good use of the class period. On top of that, I feel like I have my act together, which is a really nice bonus. So the first strategy is, and this is number 1, always plan to end 5 minutes early. Creating plans that fill up every last second of your allotted teaching time is a recipe for disaster. You'll find yourself scrambling at the end and often running over time, which makes students late for their next class and creates problems for other teachers. Instead, shoot for an end time that's 5 minutes before your class officially ends. This creates a nice buffer so that if you do run over, you'll still have a little extra time to cover it. And if you really do finish with 5 minutes to spare, do a sponge activity, a task that can expand to fill up almost any amount of time. Usually, these are whole class activities you all do together when you find yourself with an extra chunk of time at the end of a class period, during a standardized testing window when many schools discourage teachers from doing anything academic, or on days when your lesson is cut short by a fire drill or assembly. I'm including a link to an article from Edutopia that has a long list of sponge activities, and this will give you some ideas to start with if you don't have anything. What I've been doing lately with my English learners is playing Simon Says to reinforce the names of body parts. They can play from right near their seats with all their things packed up and ready to go, so we play until it's exactly time to go and they just walk out nice and relaxed. Other games like Pictionary, Charades, or Hangman are perfect for this little bit of time if and when you have it. Number 2 is set hard stops mid-lesson. Rather than looking at your entire lesson plan as one blob of time with one stop at the end of the class period, treat it as a collection of distinct chunks that have firm start and stop times. So let's look at a sample 2-hour class with my English students. So here's what it would look like on a typical day. At 10 o'clock, which is our start time, we have journal writing. This is where students respond in writing to a prompt I have on the board. This is a time when they informally practice some of the skills we've already learned. At around 10:10, on this typical day, maybe I'll have a review of past tense verbs. So like a brief mini lecture, which is a repeat of past learning, followed by some simple review exercises that students do in pairs. Around 10:45, a vocabulary game. This is where I show images of vocabulary students have already learned, and they use whiteboards to guess the word and try to spell it correctly. Up to this point in the class, everything we're doing is reinforcing and practicing previous learning. Then at 11 o'clock, I'm scheduling a lecture and practice on WH questions. So we're learning about the who, what, where, when, why, how, etc. So this is new material. It's a short lecture followed by some practice exercises. And then at 11:30, I'm planning a dialogue practice where students are given a written 2-person dialogue, which is like a skit, like a script, that uses some of the new concepts. They spend the rest of the class practicing it in pairs and then performing it for the group. So the lesson on WH questions at 11 is new material for my students, and I want a full half hour for it. I don't want to rush this lesson. I also don't want to give it right at the beginning of class because many of my students often come late. So I've learned to move the newest learning to later in the class session when I feel more confident that more students will be in the room. With that in mind, I have to make sure I'm finished with the first 3 activities, which are not based on new material, by 11 o'clock. So I have plenty of time for the new stuff. The vocabulary game that comes before that new lecture can go longer or shorter depending on how much time I have. But I'm planning on stopping right before 11 no matter what, so I have plenty of time for the new material. It helps to always look at your lesson plans this way. Note which activities you really need to have a certain amount of time for and figure out what time you absolutely must start them to make sure you get it. Write that in your lesson plans and stick to it as closely as you can. The next tip will help you do that. Number 3 is plan for expansion or contraction. Many activities can either be expanded to fit longer stretches of time or contracted to take up less time. As you look at each day's plans, note where you might be able to do that. In the example English class I just described, I know from experience that the vocabulary game can take up exactly the designated 15 minutes. It can go longer if needed, or I can make it very quick or skip it altogether if the activity before it happens to take too long. Although there are some activities like videos that consume a fixed length of time, and then there are others that have a fixed amount of content you really want to expose students to, like a reading or a lecture. Certain activity types are much more fluid and they can be shortened or lengthened if the need arises. Like discussions, for example. They can always be cut off when they're in progress, but they're also great places for expansion. As long as most students are active and talking productively, you can always let them go a little bit longer or interrupt them and call time if you have to. Another one that's good for expansion or contraction are writing tasks, like the journal writing in my example. These can be expanded or contracted. Some students may have a lot to write while others may not. You can always have more enthusiastic writers pause if needed, or if you want to stretch out the time, give the minimalists additional prompting to get them to write more. Then there's also workshops, games, role plays, and simulations. These are all activities that can be given more or less time. You can let students work a little longer on a project if it's a workshop situation, have them answer a few more questions on a game, or go a few more minutes on a role play or a simulation. Conversely, they can all be cut short if you run out of time. And even I've found that lectures can be expanded or contracted. You can make them longer by giving extra examples, adding interactive elements like think, pair, shares, or stop and jots, or giving students a few extra minutes to compare notes. If you build in a few places where these can be plugged in, you can always skip over them if you need to make the lecture faster. Number 4, set cut lines in advance. This works along with the previous strategy. If you make tentative plans to shorten an activity if needed, physically mark exactly where in the lesson plan you're going to do that if things start taking too long. So, for example, if you're working from a slide deck, you can put an icon on the slide or write in the speaker notes which slides can be skipped for time if necessary. If you want to get more techie, you can create a link at your cut line that'll let you jump from one slide to a later point. And in the blog post version of this, I've actually created a link to a video that shows you how to do it in Google Slides and how you can do that in PowerPoint. So if that sounds like something that you don't know but you'd like to, go over there to see that. Okay, number 5, normalize stopping mid-task. This one is more of a mindset than a habit, but it's one that'll make the last 2 strategies work even better, especially if you have a perfectionistic streak. The idea of stopping a task in the middle might make you or some of your students feel unsettled, as if plans were poorly designed or someone has dropped the ball. You can neutralize that feeling by having a conversation with your class ahead of time and let them know that some activities will be designed with completion in mind, while others will be cut short at times when it might feel like things are just getting going. Try to think of certain activities as flowing over the course of a week or several weeks, rather than discrete events that have to be completed in one class session. So that is 1 through 5. I'm going to just review them. So number 1 is always plan to end 5 minutes early. 2 is set hard stops mid-lesson. 3, plan for expansion or contraction. 4, set cut lines in advance. And 5, normalize stopping mid-task. Now, I am going to interrupt my list for a moment because I want to share with you a project I've been working on. We are living in a time when teaching seems to get more and more challenging, with so many factors outside of your control. But there's one thing you can get right, and that is your lesson plan. It's the core of our craft as teachers, and you don't need natural talent to do it right. There are time-tested, fundamental principles for lesson plan design. And if you understand them well and follow them closely, your students will learn better and you'll feel more satisfied with your work. If you're already a master teacher, you've probably already internalized these principles. For everyone else, from brand new teachers to those who want to do better, grounding yourself in the fundamentals will dramatically improve your teaching. Mastering the Lesson Plan is my self-paced online course that will teach you how to build solid, engaging lesson plans and sequence them into comprehensive units of instruction. I've created this course entirely from scratch, and it's taken me 3 years to do it. Let me tell you a little more about the course. In 5 modules, we start with standards and move into writing clear objectives, then designing an effective assessment plan, choosing and sequencing the learning experiences that will get students to succeed on those assessments, and then how to meet all the diverse needs your students bring to the classroom. I use sample unit plans as models, so it's really concrete. I don't just give you abstract ideas about how to teach. I show you with real examples. Every lesson in the course starts with a video where I explain a concept in clear, simple language. While you watch, you can use the printable workbook that has guided notes to fill out so you stay on track, plus space to take your own notes. If you have questions, there's an open comment section at the end of every video lesson, moderated by experienced human teachers so you can get answers to your specific questions. At the end of every module, I offer a next steps assignment you can apply to your own teaching, plus a quiz to check your understanding. And here's what I think is the best part. After the 5 modules, you'll find a huge library of teaching, assessment, and differentiation strategies you can use again and again. So even after you get the fundamentals down, the course will continue to provide value to you for the rest of your teaching career. I'm also including a library of templates you can make your own, unit plans, rubrics, and slide decks I designed myself that will help you get your materials together faster and in style. At the time of this recording, I'm still finishing the course, but I am determined to have it done by the end of summer 2026. Talking about it now is my way of holding myself accountable. I'm building a waiting list of people who want to be notified as soon as it's ready, so if you're listening in mid-2026, head over to cultopedagogy.com/teaching101 and click on Mastering the Lesson Plan. From there, you can learn more about the course and either join the waiting list, or if you are from the future, you can get it right away. Okay, let's continue. Number 6, prepare anchor activities. So far, we've only talked about the kinds of activities that you pace yourself and how to resize them to fit the often unpredictable flow of a class period. But the other factor that has a huge impact on classroom pacing is what differentiation expert Carol Ann Tomlinson calls ragged time, when students finish tasks at different times, leaving you with the job of finding something else for the early finishers to do. A solution to this is establishing a set of what Tomlinson refers to as anchor activities, tasks students can work on independently after the assigned work has been completed at a high level. These can be chosen to supplement your existing coursework and can include reading, journal writing, creating a portfolio of work samples, and practicing skills like spelling, computation, vocabulary, writing, art techniques, or skills in a sport. For these to work seamlessly, Tomlinson recommends doing them first as a whole class, where students simply work independently and quietly on the anchor activity. Once they seem comfortable and confident with that, move to a half and half setup, where half the class is doing a content-based activity aligned to their needs and the other works on the anchor activity. Eventually, the anchor activities can be primarily used as an option for early finishers and become an automatic go-to whenever students find themselves with nothing to do. Number 7 is pre-stage materials. Far too many classroom minutes can be wasted finding, pulling out, organizing, and distributing materials for activities. The more of this work you can do beforehand, the less time you'll waste in class. Here are some things you can do to prepare. 1, you can stack materials by group or table. then have a representative from each group pick them up when the time comes to use them. 2, you can keep commonly used supplies in predictable places and set up systems for students to help themselves as needed. 3, think through the tech you'll need, cables, remotes, dongles, and whatnot, and make sure that all of that is ready to go before class starts. And then 4, many of these tasks that I just mentioned can be done in the first few minutes of class by student helpers. Training them and establishing systems early in the year can save tons of time later. So that was 7, pre-stage materials. Number 8, create an opening and closing routine. So my first draft of this section started with this sentence. We can lose hours of learning time every year if we don't give the start and end of class some structure. Later, I realized I didn't love that message. The concept of downtime has been unnecessarily demonized by a lot of people in education. And I think this idea that students should be academically engaged from bell to bell is unrealistic and unhealthy. Humans need breaks. We need a little boredom, and we need to socialize. This is true not only for our students, but for ourselves. So I'm putting in this strategy as a suggestion to make the start and end of your classes more intentional and predictable. Not necessarily academically rigorous, but intentional and predictable, so students know what to expect. So here are a couple of thoughts on what that could look like. First off, many teachers use these times for do-nows or bell ringers, where students complete a warm-up or entry or exit ticket based on the content they're learning, and that's great. Anchor activities, which I already talked about earlier, can also be great for the start and end of class, either on their own or as a buffer for students finishing a bell ringer at different times. Another point I'd like to make, though, is that the do now doesn't have to be academic at all. This can be a time for quiet reflection, breathing exercises, or check-ins. I'm including a link to a post from the website Facing History and Ourselves that has some really thoughtful ideas for these kinds of openings and closings. For example, they have an emotional check-in called a mood meter that helps students develop a more sophisticated vocabulary for their feelings and is a great way for the teacher to get a pulse on what's going on with students emotionally. Another one I like is called 3 Good Things, where students record 3 good things that have happened in their day. Giving students an opportunity to do this kind of reflection at the start or end of class is another great way to use that time intentionally. In my case, with the students that I have now, the adult English learners, my students arrive at different times a lot of times. And because they're adults, they have a lot of life responsibilities and other factors that can make them late. So I've had to accept the fact that they're going to stagger in over the course of 15 minutes or so. With that in mind, I start every class with a writing prompt. While they answer it, I circulate, look at what they've written, and I give them individual feedback. I have really been trying to take my time with this process, knowing that some people will finish before others, and they'll probably just get on their phones or socialize. Yes, they could be doing more academically rigorous work, but I've just decided to let that go. Okay, number 9 is clean as you go. When I'm teaching a class, I have a fear of dead air, of time when students are just kind of waiting around for something to happen. It's my natural tendency to want to move from one activity to the next quickly and seamlessly, ensuring that as much as possible our time is spent doing something enriching. And one way that plays out is that I often don't take time to clean up materials after an activity is over. If I distribute a handout, I end up with a few leftovers sitting on whatever surface I'm using for materials. Then 20 minutes later, I throw something else on top of that, and 10 minutes later, maybe a third thing. If I have my students doing something hands-on, like flashcards or mini whiteboards, I can forget to gather them up when we're done, or I'll do it in a rush, piling things up at the front of the room without organizing them and properly putting them away. Mentally, I tell myself I'll straighten it all out later. But this leaves me with a mess at the end that I have to then take time to straighten out. On the days when I'm more on top of things, I take the time in between activities to put things away as I go. This may mean students have to wait an extra minute for me, and I've decided that that's worth it. Other times, I squeeze in the cleanup while they're working on something that doesn't require my presence. Either way, building this habit is a good way to save me time after class so I can have more of my free time to myself. And number 10 is leave notes for next time. Taking just a minute after a lesson to write yourself a note for future use can be a huge help when it's time to teach the lesson again. Some ways to do this are putting a Post-it note on paper plans or handouts. You can leave notes like "This took only 5 minutes" or "Part 4 confused many students." Or you can type notes on digital plans in large, brightly colored font. Notes like "Add a few extra minutes to set up laptops for this activity." Even if you think you'll remember next time around, you're better off capturing your exact thoughts now while they're fresh. So I've only shared 10 strategies here, but I know there's a whole lot more out there. I would love to hear what you do to make classroom time work for you. If you have a strategy that would really benefit other teachers, come over to cultofpedagogy.com, click podcast, choose episode 273, and share your strategy in the comments. That's also where you can go to read a written summary of these ideas. To get a regular email from me about my newest blog posts, podcast episodes, courses, products, and speaking services, sign up for my mailing list at cultofpedagogy.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.